The sun blazed overhead as the Thousand Sunny sailed smoothly away from the shores of Wano. The log pose spun excitedly, promising new adventures, but the mood aboard the ship was anything but cheerful. Nami stood in the middle of the deck, her face burning with fury. Inside a small iron cage sat Luffy, bruised and hunched over like a guilty puppy. Nami's voice thundered across the deck as she shouted at him, furious that his reckless stunt had nearly killed them all. Luffy, with tears welling up in his eyes, whimpered from inside the cage, apologizing in a pitiful, trembling voice. Jinbei chuckled warmly, trying to defuse the situation by reminding everyone that no one had been seriously hurt. Frankie wasn't convinced, though. He barked about keeping Luffy on a tighter leash to avoid future disasters. Nami, still fuming, glared at Luffy and warned that their patience was nearing its limit. Honestly, after all this time, you'd think Luffy would have learned something, but nope. As tensions cooled, Robin lounged gracefully in a hammock, smiling as if she were watching an amusing play. Frankie soon redirected the crew's attention by waving around a bundle of freshly printed bounty posters. Excitement rippled through the crew. Frankie proudly laughed about how tough the Sunny was, pointing out that the ship had only suffered minor damage from Luffy's antics. Usopp shuddered at the thought of Nami's wrath, muttering that no one, not even the Yonko, could survive her anger. Sanji threw a suspicious glance at Luffy, wondering if his stunt had triggered an unconscious blast of Conqueror's Haki. Robin, with a serene smile, glanced at her poster and murmured a simple, sweet, thanks to. The energy shifted again when everyone laid eyes on their new bounties. Chopper's jaw dropped in dismay when he realized his bounty had barely increased. Nami shrieked in horror at her new, inflated price on her head, wailing that bounty hunters would be hounding her forever. Brook, ever cheerful, let out his iconic "ya-ho-ho-ho" as he admired his updated bounty. Frankie, on the other hand, exploded in frustration upon realizing his wanted poster now showed a picture of the Thousand Sunny instead of his own face. Imagine being so iconic they replace you with your ship. Usopp fell dramatically to the floor, begging the heavens to stop raising his bounty. Robin, ever graceful, patted Chopper and cooed that his small bounty was still something to be proud of. Sanji, meanwhile, seethed quietly as he discovered he ranked lower than both Zoro and Jinbei. His face darkened as he muttered bitter curses under his breath. Zoro leaned casually against the railing, smirking and telling Sanji to accept his place among the sour grapes. Jinbei, as calm as the sea on a windless day, asked Sanji if something was wrong with a teasing smile. At the center of it all, Luffy's new bounty fluttered in the wind. 3 billion berries, now officially recognized as one of the 4 emperors. If Luffy's worth 3 billion, imagine what chaos he'll cause now that he knows it. Far across the seas, the circus-themed stronghold of empty bluffs bustled with energy. Inside the massive hall, Buggy the Clown sat nervously at a grand table, beads of sweat rolling down his forehead. At his sides loomed 2 legendary figures, Crocodile and Dracula Mihawk. Crocodile leaned forward, his voice a low growl, demanding an explanation as to why Buggy was being treated as their boss. Buggy, trembling, stammered and groveled, insisting that everything was a huge misunderstanding. Mihawk, sipping wine calmly, chuckled darkly, noting that Buggy might be the only man in history to cry for mercy and still wind up an emperor. Buggy proving once again that the universe truly favors the absurd. Meanwhile, outside the hall, Buggy's clueless subordinates cheered loudly. They praised Chairman Buggy's genius in recruiting Crocodile and Mihawk, completely oblivious to the truth behind their alliance. All across the seas, pirates and civilians alike gossiped in awe, convinced that Buggy was a cunning mastermind commanding terrifying power. Inside the hall, Crocodile slammed a cross-guild flyer onto the table. The colorful poster depicted Buggy's grinning face larger than life, with Crocodile and Mihawk behind him like loyal subordinates. Buggy fell to his knees again, pleading innocence, while Mihawk looked on in quiet disdain. At Navy HQ, the mood was grim. Officers discussed how Cross Guild was now paying bounties on the heads of Marines, a revolutionary and terrifying concept. The organization's growing influence was undeniable, and it sent shockwaves through the world government. New bounty reports were finalized. Crocodile, 1,965,000,000 berries. Dracule Mihawk, 3,590,000,000 berries. Buggy the Clown, 3,189,000,000 berries. Despite the absurdity of all, Buggy was now officially considered a major global threat. Somewhere, Shanks is definitely laughing his red-haired head off. Back at Empty Bluffs, a massive rally unfolded. Buggy, forcibly tied up and hoisted into the air, addressed the crowd with shaky bravado. He declared that Cross Guild would lead the world into a new age, one where Marines would no longer rule unchecked. The crowd exploded with cheers, chanting Buggy's name like he was a messianic figure. In the background, Buggy's terrified expression said everything. Meanwhile, on the Grand Line at Kamabaka Queendom, the Revolutionary Army gathered anxiously. Nearby, Dragon's expression hardened. He muttered that if Sabo had truly murdered King Cobra, forgiveness would not come easily. Ivankov, ever theatrical, threw his arms in the air and declared it a miracle that Sabo was alive. The revolutionaries around them erupted in cheers, clinging to the hope that their cause could still ignite real change. Across the seas, however, the Navy wasn't celebrating. Hidden agents monitoring communications scrambled to record the transmission. Tension filled the room as they heard Sabo's voice again through the Den Den Mushi. Koala clutched a Den Den Mushi, heart pounding as she prayed for news. A crackling voice came through the line. It was Sabo, alive and reaching out after the disaster at the Reverie. The wind howled across the seas of Wano as the final echoes of celebration faded into the distance. Standing tall on the roof of a crumbling castle, Yamato gazed into the horizon with determination burning in their eyes. Facing Momonosuke and Kinemon, Yamato announced their decision without hesitation. They would not set sail with the Straw Hats just yet. Instead, Yamato declared they would stay in Wano, protecting it like Kazuki Oden once did. Sometimes, loyalty speaks louder than any dream. Momonosuke's expression twisted with confusion and emotion. The land of Wano had suffered enough, and Yamato, carrying the spirit of Odin, was not ready to abandon it. Meanwhile, near the shores, Marco prepared to leave. With a wide grin, he waved goodbye to Luffy, perched on the Thousand Sunny's deck. "Don't get too comfy on land, Straw Hat," Marco called, his voice full of spirit. Luffy laughed in response, waving wildly at his airborne friend. Marco ascended into the skies, catching a lift aboard the Red Hair Pirate's ship as they set sail toward the unknown. From riding with Whitebeard to hitching rides with Shanks, Marco really knows how to pick legendary carpools. The seas calmed, but trouble was already brewing elsewhere. In the next scene, we can see Hancock depressed as how bad the Amazon Lily is in bad condition and that she may need leave, or else the Navy will keep on attacking. She appears to decide to just marry Luffy. In the next scene, it's shown that Amazon Lily was attacked by the Navy with their new weapons, the new pacifistas. Weapons of war unlike anything the world had seen before. Their first target, the island of warriors, Amazon Lily. The sun burned harshly over the calm belt as Amazon Lily faced its greatest threat yet. Vice Admiral Yamakaji led the assault, with a fleet of marine battleships surrounding the island. Waves crashed as newly deployed Seraphim units, childlike but terrifying clones, descended upon the battlefield. The Seraphim launched devastating attacks, leveling entire sections of the city with beams of light. The Kujo warriors fought back fiercely, refusing to surrender their homeland. Far above the chaos, a massive black ship appeared on the horizon, the flag of the Blackbeard pirates fluttering menacingly in the wind. Blackbeard himself, Marshal D. Teach, stepped onto the battlefield with a grin as wide as the ocean. "Zeaha, Amazon Lily's in trouble, just the way I like it," He set his sights firmly on Boa Hancock, craving the powers of her Mero Mero no Mi for his own. Inside the palace, Gloriosa, the former empress, pleaded with Hancock to flee. Kobe is asking Hancock to just surrender and they will leave. But Hancock, the pirate empress, stood tall, her gaze unwavering. I am the ruler of Amazon Lily. I will not run. Blackbeard's pirates flooded the island, only to be met by the pacifistas and Hancock's terrifying counterattack. With a graceful wave of her hand, Hancock unleashed Slave Arrow, petrifying dozens of enemies instantly, both pirates and the navies. Anyone who stands in my way shall become stone, Hancock declared coldly. Honestly, with how powerful Hancock is, you'd think Blackbeard would pick an easier target, like a volcano. Blackbeard, however, was no fool. Utilizing his Yami no Mi powers, he canceled Hancock's abilities and seized her by the neck, lifting her effortlessly off the ground. Yet Hancock, composed even in the face of death, warned him sharply, "If you kill me, everyone turned to stone will remain that way forever." For the first time, Teach hesitated, his greed clashing with reality. The standoff reached its boiling point, until a chilling new presence swept across the battlefield. From the skies, Silver's Rayleigh, the Dark King, descended. Drawing his sword casually, Rayleigh's mere presence shifted the balance instantly. "Teach, I don't like you," Rayleigh said, voice calm but filled with lethal promise. Even Blackbeard, grinning madly moments before, paused in the face of Roger's right-hand man. If legends had gravity, Rayleigh would be a black hole. Faced with no good options, Teach growled curses under his breath and reluctantly released Hancock. Without another word, Blackbeard and his crew retreated, leaving chaos in their wake. Later, at the ruins of Amazon Lily, Rayleigh spoke quietly to Hancock. "Truth be told, I'm not as strong as I used to be. If it came to a straight fight, it could have gone badly." The island lay battered but unbeaten. The Kuja's sisters tended to the wounded, their faces hard but full of pride. Meanwhile, deeper secrets began to emerge. The Navy's Seraphim, revealed to be clones modeled after former warlords, were a terrifying evolution. One such clone, resembling a young Hancock, had fought alongside the Marines with brutal efficiency. Because when regular pacifistas aren't scary enough, let's throw child versions of warlords into the mix. As the dust settled on Amazon Lily, the world shifted again. News erupted like wildfire. Captain Kobe, the Navy's rising star, had been kidnapped during the battle. The headline screamed, "Captain Kobe of Sword abducted by Blackbeard pirates." The winds were gentle as the Thousand Sunny sailed through peaceful waters. But inside the ship, the atmosphere was anything but calm. Luffy stood proudly in front of his gathered crew, excitement blazing in his eyes. "I'm going to tell you my real dream," he announced. Everyone leaned in, curious. Even Zoro, who usually played it cool, watched attentively. Robin smiled warmly. Jinbei listened with quiet respect. With a wide grin, Luffy finally blurted it out. His true, hidden ambition. "Brace yourselves. This is either going to be pure genius or pure chaos." But what he said was left unheard to us readers. Instead, the crew's reactions told the story. Zoro's face twisted in disbelief. Nami gawked. Usopp fell backward, clutching his head. Sanji's cigarette almost fell from his mouth. Chopper's jaw dropped, eyes sparkling with awe. Frankie shouted, "That's super." Robin chuckled sweetly. Even Jinbei, the seasoned helmsman, looked pleasantly surprised. They couldn't believe what they had just heard. Luffy laughed, saying he had told this same dream to Shanks, Ace, and Sabo long ago, and that he still meant it with all his heart. The crew slowly regained their senses. Nami muttered that it was just so like Luffy. Zoro grinned, shrugging it off as exactly what he expected from their captain. Sanji swore he'd stick around to see it come true. Even Usopp, shaking with laughter, said he would help. Dreams this ridiculous are exactly the reason Luffy's the one leading this madhouse. Meanwhile, far from the sunny, dark clouds brewed across the seas. At the Navy HQ, Marines were in chaos. A top-secret emergency transmission had been intercepted, a call from Sabo himself. Inside the Kamabaka Queendom, revolutionaries gathered tensely around a Den Mushi. Koala gripped the receiver, her hands trembling slightly. "Sabo, are you safe?" Sabo's voice crackled through the line, alive but heavy with tension. "I'm fine, but listen, I didn't kill King Cobra." Dragon stood quietly in the background, his expression grave. Ivankov, ever the dramatist, threw their arms in the air dramatically, declaring it was good to hear Sabo's voice. But Sabo's tone grew darker. He spoke of something terrifying he had seen during the Reverie, something that shouldn't exist. A hidden throne, a secret ruler. Sabo had witnessed the truth, that the world was ruled not by kings or queens, but by a shadow no one acknowledged. When even a revolutionary leader sounds shaken, you know the world just got a whole lot scarier. The citizens of Lelugia had rebelled against the world government, and in response, they were wiped out. Not by an army, not by bombs, but by a weapon, something no one had ever seen before. From the sky, a divine-like blast of energy rained down. In an instant, the entire island of Lelugia was obliterated, leaving nothing but an empty scar on the ocean surface. There were no survivors, no remains, just silence. The government quietly erased its existence from official records. When a government becomes God, that's when the world truly trembles. Meanwhile, days passed. On the Sunny, the seas themselves roared with unnatural fury. And then, without warning, something strange appeared on the horizon. A giant column of rising seawater spiraled into the sky like a liquid tower. Nami gasped. Brooke's jaw clattered open. Frankie yelled. Inside the shimmering water, something moved. A figure, trapped, floating helplessly within the swirling vortex. Luffy, wide-eyed, pointed. "There's something in there." Without hesitation, Zoro drew his sword. With a clean, powerful slash, he sliced the water column cleanly in half. The sea roared as the structure collapsed, water crashing back into the ocean. From the broken remnants of the spiral, a person tumbled out, a girl, coughing and flailing. The crew rushed over as the figure floated closer. Luffy and Chopper grabbed her. As she coughed seawater from her lungs, her face finally became clear. It was a teenage girl with wild pink hair, a punkish outfit, and a fierce look in her eyes. Jewelry Bonnie, one of the most notorious members of the worst generation. From rising whirlpools to teenage pirates falling from the sky. Welcome back to everyday life with the Straw Hats. Meanwhile, atop the raging seas, the Straw Hat crew faces chaos as their ship is tossed about by monstrous waves. A mysterious figure is hurled out of the sea, gasping and coughing. It's none other than Jewelry Bonnie, the notorious member of the worst generation. Luffy, ever curious, watches as she lands near them, drenched and exhausted. It's like destiny itself decided to toss her straight into Luffy's orbit. Classic. Suddenly, a colossal shadow stirs beneath the waves. Panic grips the crew as they spot a terrifying shape below. Bonnie, barely managing to speak between gasps, warns them frantically to look down. Realization dawns too late. Something huge is about to emerge. A gigantic mechanical shark bursts from the water with a deafening snap, jaws wide open. The Sunny barely dodges, but the impact sends Luffy, Chopper, and Bonnie hurtling into the sea. Jinbei quickly takes command, steering the Sunny away from danger while Zoro and Frankie scramble to stabilize the ship. Frankie, with his usual mechanical brilliance, activates the Sunny's emergency keel attachment and screw propeller, pulling off an impressive maneuver to stabilize their descent. Props to Frankie for treating Sunny like a fighter jet in the middle of a hurricane. However, the mechanical shark isn't finished yet. It locks onto the Sunny with targeting lasers, preparing to attack. The mechanical beast fires a torpedo. A massive explosion rocks the ocean, sending the crew flying and the Sunny capsizing. Jinbei dives heroically into the sea to rescue the overboard trio, Luffy, Chopper, and Bonnie. Despite the violent currents, he manages to grab them and resurface. Jinbei continues to prove he's the true MVP when it comes to anything ocean-related. Honestly, where would they be without him? Meanwhile, the mechanical shark prepares for another attack, but before it can strike again, an enormous humanoid robot intervenes. It's a massive, futuristic creation that clobbers the shark effortlessly. The scene then cuts away from the Straw Hats to another location. On a nearby island, the G-14 naval base, a very different scene unfolds. Tashigi is seen tending to a group of young children, encouraging them to drink their medicine even as they pout and complain about the taste. Gotta hand it to Tashigi. From fighting pirates to babysitting kids without skipping a beat. Vice Admiral Dahl, with her fierce appearance and spiky fashion, discusses an urgent matter with Tashigi. It's about Captain Kobe, who's gone missing. Tashigi, visibly worried, says she can't abandon her duties even though her heart aches for Kobe. Helmeppo then barges into Rear Admiral Prince Grus, pleading desperately for help. His face is soaked in tears as he begs for permission to deploy a Seraphim to rescue Kobe from Pirate Island, Blackbeard's territory. Helmeppo's emotional outburst is joined by Commander Hibari, who also tearfully supports the plan out of loyalty to Kobe. Prince Grus, calmly observing the chaos, warns them that entering Blackbeard's domain is practically suicide. It's called Hakanosu for a reason, a beehive swarming with pirates. Honestly, Helmeppo's desperation here is so raw you can't even laugh at it. It's pure loyalty and panic combined. Respect. The higher-ups at G-14, however, refuse the reckless idea, insisting it's too dangerous without direct orders, especially since even Drake is out of contact. Meanwhile, back with Luffy's group, after getting out of the sea, Bonnie and Luffy's group huddle near the shore. Bonnie quickly clears the confusion. She's part of the worst generation too, and reminds Luffy that they crossed paths at Sabaody 2 years ago. Though she thanks them for saving her, she firmly reminds them that they're still enemies. Luffy laughs it off, calling her Buggy, and Chopper, shivering from the cold, asks if Luffy is seriously an emperor now. Yep, the absurdity of Luffy's new title hasn't sunk in even for his own crew. When Bonnie mentions her ship was eaten by the mechanical shark and that she's starving, Luffy and Chopper immediately suggest looking for a restaurant, only to be scolded because they're on a government island with no food joints in sight. Bonnie reveals the bombshell. They've landed on Egghead Island, home of Dr. Vegapunk's research lab. The island said to be 500 years into the future compared to the rest of the world. Leave it to Luffy to stumble straight into the heart of futuristic science with his usual, where's the food, priorities. As they gaze toward the smoking island, an enormous factory complex looms in the distance. Meanwhile, the Straw Hats aboard the Sunny stare in awe as the giant robot lifts their ship gently from the water. Nami, Brook, Usopp, and the others are completely stunned. Imagine seeing your ship saved by a Gundam-looking giant out of nowhere, only in one piece. Inside the cockpit of the robot, a mysterious figure monitors the situation. They mutter about how overriding primal instincts like the shark's predatory nature is still a massive challenge. Clearly, whoever built these machines isn't just any scientist. They're grappling with high-level problems. The giant robot carrying the Sunny now surfaces fully. Emerging from inside the giant robot is a young woman in futuristic gear and goggles. When the Straw Hats thank her for saving them, she smirks and clarifies that saving them was never her intention. Ouch, that's cold, but also very on-brand for a mad scientist vibe. She confidently states that she works for the world government, calling herself a scientific genius, though she playfully claims she's only mediocre. Finally, with a big grin, she introduces herself. You can call me Dr. Vegapunk. The crew, and undoubtedly every reader, is left in complete shock. Forget everything you thought you knew about Vegapunk. Oda just flipped the table on us again. Far above the water, in the high-tech docking zone of Egghead, the rest of the Straw Hat crew found themselves held aloft in the grip of a massive robot. The 1,000 Sunny dangled precariously beneath it, Usopp was losing his mind with excitement, practically worshipping the machine. Frankie was seconds from tears of joy, completely captivated by the tech around them. Sanji tried to focus on their safety. Brook wailed in confusion. Robin observed quietly. Zoro remained unimpressed. The robot finally landed, releasing them on a wide landing pad. There, standing boldly with her arms crossed, was the young woman who had taken control of the situation earlier. She introduced herself as Dr. Vegapunk, much to the crew's collective disbelief. But she quickly clarified, she wasn't the Vegapunk, but rather one of 6. She called herself Punk 02, Lilith the Evil. And evil she was, because the next thing she did was point cannons at the crew and declare she'd be taking their ship and treasure. The crew blinked, caught between confusion and fury. Sanji stammered. Usopp clung to a mast. Frankie began to panic. Lilith clearly didn't understand who she was dealing with. Before things could escalate, another voice came through her communicator. Calm, direct, and firm, it was Shaka, also known as Punk 01, the logic Vegapunk. He warned Lilith that her actions were reckless. He informed her that the crew she was threatening wasn't some ragtag pirate gang. They were the Straw Hat Pirates, Emperor Luffy's crew. That made Lilith freeze. Zoro's hand hovered near his sword. Robin simply stared. There was no need to posture. Their presence alone said it all. You know you've messed up when someone has to remind you you're standing in front of Yonko's crew. The salty winds of the New World stirred as Luffy's group stood at the rocky shores of Egghead Island. Bonnie, now regaining her breath, stared into the distant skyline dominated by impossible towers and glowing tech. Her tone was sharp. This wasn't just another island to her. She declared this to be Egghead, the infamous island of science. But for her, it held a deeper, more painful meaning. This was the home of the man who turned her father, Bartholomew Kuma, into a mindless machine. She didn't see Vegapunk as a genius. She saw him as the man who killed her dad. The transformation had shocked the world, but to Bonnie, it had shattered her heart. Luffy looked stunned, unable to reconcile the story with the massive figure they had once fought alongside. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. This wasn't just another detour. For Bonnie, this was personal, revenge disguised as survival. Back with Luffy's group, the landscape became increasingly surreal. They entered a holographic security zone and were suddenly surrounded by monstrous, glowing creatures. Bonnie screamed. Chopper panicked. Jinbei stayed focused. Luffy? He tried to punch one. Jinbei yanked him back mid-leap and explained the creatures were illusions, just holograms. They passed through one, confirming it wasn't real. The tech here was far beyond anything they had ever seen. Bonnie wasn't impressed. She made it clear. Egghead was 500 years ahead of the rest of the world. They weren't ready for what was coming. As they moved deeper into the floating walkways and neon structures, an enormous humanoid figure suddenly appeared before them. It was explaining how the environment was set in the island when Luffy punched it, assuming she is just a hologram as well, but she punched back, which sent Luffy flying to the food vendo machine. Meanwhile, the enormous humanoid continued to show off her strength by punching holograms and glitching walls, explaining tech in the most explosive way possible. Jinbei was already preparing for whatever absurd twist would come next. Then he asked who is she, and this one called herself Punk 05, Atlas the Wrath. It was another version of Vegapunk. Luffy and Chopper watched with extreme surprise. Bonnie stood in slack-jawed disbelief. When your first meeting with a scientist ends in a ground punch, you know it's going to be a fun arc. Elsewhere, aboard a ship in motion across the Grand Line, Cypher Pole agents gathered in a quiet chamber. Rob Lucci, Kaku, and Stussy reviewed their orders. Their mission: eliminate Dr. Vegapunk. Kaku is explaining about Dr. Vegapunk and his multiple 6 satellites. 01, Shaka, Logic. 02, Lilith Evil. 03, Edison Flare. 04, Pythagoras Wisdom. 05, Atlas Wrath. 06, York Desire. They weren't clones. They were Vegapunk, One mind split across 6 bodies, synchronized regularly through a neural network that kept them unified. Their brain was quite literally too big for one body. Most people dream of flying cars. Vegapunk built the future and then gave it fists. It was a stunning order, one that even Lucci questioned. Why destroy the world's top scientist? What he'd done across the line. Behind him stands Kuma, but this one is different than before. He has black wings. Their response lay in what they carried. The government had decided Vegapunk was a threat to their control. His inventions were evolving too far, too fast. When the smartest man in the world becomes the most dangerous one, you don't argue. You send assassins. From Bonnie's rage to CP0's deadly mission. From Vegapunk's fractured identity to the monstrous potential of the Seraphim. Everything was converging on this one island. And the Straw Hats? They were already knee-deep in it all. The aftermath of a glorious meal left the Straw Hats stuffed and satisfied, sprawled out with bulging bellies. Fat and happy, they raved about the food machine that had conjured such delights, with the exception of Sanji, of course. A satisfying meal, they called it. Few delish, but among the chorus of bliss, Atlas stood with arms crossed, unimpressed by their gluttony. For bulging bellies, and yet still no appreciation for the tech, she mused. Beside the food machine, the crew admired the ingenious vending-style device, though Frankie noted that his portion had looked that way to begin with. Meanwhile, Atlas was already eager to plunge back into her chaos-fueled research, declaring that if she didn't run riot, no one would. A bold workplace motto. Off to the side, a strange mechanized hound, the recycle cur, let out a synthetic bark as it rolled past. Just another normal day on Egghead. Suddenly, the tranquil setting shifted. The Straw Hats were joined by strangers, humanoid figures in futuristic garb who appeared out of nowhere. Robin, ever observant, deduced they were likely lab assistants, now appearing only after confirming the crew wasn't a threat. Smart move. These pirates have a habit of blowing things up. And then Luffy re-emerged, sporting new clothes courtesy of the lab. He twirled and beamed, admiring the lightness of the material and the breezy feel. Usopp and the others rushed in, equally decked out in their high-tech uniforms. Even Bonnie, now sleek in a new outfit, commented on the futuristic fashion choices. Chopper marveled at how the boot made him feel like he was floating. Cue the Egghead fashion show. The transformation chamber had provided everything, from tropical disguise gear to battle-ready suits. Jinbei's new Hawaiian look definitely killed the covert vibe. But then the ground shifted again, this time with dread. A colossal figure loomed in the distance. Luffy's face twisted. Was that Kuma? Bonnie froze in horror. That unmistakable silhouette was unmistakably him, her father. Yet he was clad in police garb, and without hesitation began to charge. The crew scrambled as the massive cyborg surged toward them. Luffy, sandwich still in hand, braced for a fight. But Bonnie yelled for him to stop, panic in her voice. Desperate, trembling. Kuma was about to unleash a laser blast. The machine registered theft. The crew had taken garments and provisions without proper clearance. This wasn't a greeting. It was law enforcement. And Kuma was judge, jury, and cyborg executioner. Bonnie collapsed in a pleading, begging them not to fight back. But there was no time. The robot bore down, intent on punishment. Luffy launched a counterattack with a massive gum-gum strike. A chaotic brawl erupted in the lab. Panels blurred between desperation and defense. The Straw Hats tried to fend off Kuma's mechanical wrath. Surely the damage he's causing is worse than what we did. Frankie roared. Either way, we've got no choice, cried Sanji. Weapons and fists clashed as the group struggled with the moral weight of fighting Bonnie's father. In the madness, Bonnie's emotions spilled over. She wept openly, her eyes wide and full of pain. Please don't hurt my daddy, she sobbed. It was the kind of cry that could cut through steel or pierce even a cyborg's programming. Meanwhile, somewhere far from the chaos of Egghead, the sea churned as a familiar ship surfaced violently. On the deck of the Polar Tang, the Heart Pirates were in full retreat, narrowly dodging a devastating underwater assault. Captain Law barked orders as their sub tried to breach the surface, only to be bombarded by wave after wave. On board, the crew were panicking. Another hit, and the water pressure alone would kill them. They had to reach land. Thankfully, a direction was spotted, land northeast of their current position. As the ship breached the surface, a bizarre transformation had already begun. Law's crewmates had been infected and transformed. Gender swapped in chaos. Law stood firm, clearly struggling to contain the effects. But his haki was strong enough to nullify the devil fruit's twisted effects. It's hard to lead a crew when everyone keeps hitting on you. The culprit soon revealed himself, none other than Q of the Blackbeard Pirates, riding his massive horse stronger. And he wasn't alone. Burgess appeared, flexing obscene power, hurling mountains with ease thanks to his buff fruit. Law could barely keep up with the insanity. Teleporting across the battlefield was Van Augur, using his warp fruit to transport allies wherever needed. One after another, Blackbeard's heavy hitters assembled like it was a carnival of chaos. And finally, the man himself arrived, laughing from atop Stronger's back, the dreaded Marshal D. Teach. Because what's a pirate ambush without the most chaotic Yonko in the world making a grand entrance on a flying horse? Blackbeard greeted Law with mock enthusiasm. He had expected either Luffy, Kid, or Law to pass through this route. He wasn't picky. Any of them would do. Now, it was time to settle the score. A winner-takes-all battle was about to begin. The prize? Road Ponglif and, perhaps, a shortcut to the One Piece. As Blackbeard grinned, eyes gleaming with greed, Law unsheathed his blade and stepped forward. The stage was set. The Titans would clash once more. Law and Blackbeard clash in a ferocious battle that quakes the very ocean. Law commands his room and slashes with amputate, while Blackbeard retaliates with his trademark quake crash, sending shockwaves hurtling across the battlefield. Law's crew, realizing the scale of danger, scrambles into action. Hakugan takes the polar tang, while Shachi and Penguin dive into the sea to provide cover. Amid the destruction, Law's men toss explosive apple bombs toward Blackbeard's ship. It's a desperate counterattack. Underwater, Gene Bart gets sniped at as he tries to shield Law's retreat. The Heart Pirates are outnumbered, and the Blackbeard crew is pressing the advantage. Law commands K-Room, slicing apart incoming attacks, but when he unleashes Shock Will, it blasts Blackbeard with shocking force. The Emperor screams in pain. But Augur quickly uses Warp to extract him before the damage can get worse. Blackbeard, coughing up blood, isn't backing down. "We finish what we start," he roars. He charges back into battle, pitting devil fruit powers against Law's surgical precision. The battlefield grows more intense, more desperate. Meanwhile, Pudding is revealed to be a hostage aboard one of Blackbeard's ships. She glares defiantly, her third eye wide open. "Mama's gonna make you eat those words if she's still alive," she hisses at her captors. Dark foreshadowing, anyone? Elsewhere, on Egghead Island, the island of the future, the story returns to Luffy and crew. The pacifista version of Kuma has halted after Bonnie's strange transformation powers aged everyone drastically. Luffy, now a frail old man, wheezes dramatically. "Did you have to make me this old, Bonnie?" Bonnie, visibly upset, tells them how painful it is to see a pacifista that looks like her father. Pacifistas just bring up bad memories, she admits. Jinbei gently explains the tragic backstory of Bartholomew Kuma, once the tyrannical king of Sorbet, turned pirate, captured and sentenced for life by the Navy. Vegapunk offered him freedom in exchange for becoming a warlord, and a guinea pig for body modification and cloning experiments. Bonnie rejects the idea that her father was a tyrant. "Daddy was no stinking tyrant," she yells, slashing at jungle debris in frustration. She shows off a working beam saber she scavenged, confirming they're in a scrapyard full of Vegapunk's failed inventions. She reveals her father belonged to a mysterious, special race, and furiously rejects the idea that it justified making him a lab rat. Back in the skies above, the Thousand Sunny soars high, carried by the flying Vega Force 01 robot using anti-gravity jet thrusters. Frankie, Usopp, and the others marvel at the futuristic city below, where climate control and floating cities are part of the tech marvels of Egghead. They arrive at the main lab, a massive dome emblazoned with Vegapunk. Here, they're welcomed by Atlas and ushered to a dressing room for their appropriate attire. One transformation later, and the Straw Hats are decked out in flashy, futuristic sci-fi gear. Nami and Robin looking stunning in their sleek suits, while Sanji can't stop blushing and Frankie poses like a fashion model on steroids. But amidst all the fun and fashion, Vegapunk delivers a haunting line to Dragon. "I'll be dead soon." Excuse me, what now? The chapter ends with Vegapunk foreshadowing his own demise, and the mysteries around his connection to Dragon deepen. The scene opens once more above Egghead, the dazzling island of the future. Nestled high in a lab stratum, the massive Junk Records facility looms overhead. Back on the Thousand Sunny, Zoro lounges, sipping tea casually. "The way I see it," he muses, "when it comes to a government island, you gotta think about who's gonna be around to bail him out if they get caught." Beside him, Brooke agrees cheerily. "Yo-ho-ho. I was thinking the same thing. Would you care for some tea? Because what's a little potential government ambush without some refreshments?" Meanwhile, Caribou checks in with Zoro and Brooke. "I didn't think we'd be heading for a government island," he complains. Zoro smiles. "I heard you helped our captain out." Caribou seethes silently, cursing the Straw Hats. "These jerks. I'll remember this." Down below, the others are experiencing the marvels of Egghead firsthand. A massive cylindrical structure labeled Labo towers before them, marked by the name Vegapunk. Suddenly, new stairs sprout from the ground. The stairs are moving. Usopp yells, amazed. "What kind of setup is this? How's it powered?" Lilith explains with a grin. "You could say the whole island runs on fire." Nami's eyes sparkle. Lilith muses, "If only there was such a thing as an eternal flame." Oh no, here we go again with Vegapunk's impossible dreams. They approach the lab's entrance. Lilith slips through the metallic wall effortlessly. Sanji shouts, "What the?" She's going right through the wall. Frankie, wide-eyed, wonders if they can make a son of their own using such energy. Inside, Edison calls out for Lilith, but she urges the others forward. "Stop dilly-dallying. Don't let your senses dupe you." And the rest follow her in, confused. The metallic wall solidifies behind them again. "No way. It's turned back into solid metal." "I'm Vegapunk Edison," answered the voice when Sanji asked. Suddenly, chaos. A mysterious child-sized figure with wings and white flames emerges. Seraphim 04. The Straw Hats freeze. "That's Jinbei." He looks just like the real thing, only younger. The clone child launches an attack, catching them off guard. And with that, the battle begins. As Seraphim Jinbei dives to the floor as if it's water, Nami gasps. Usopp panics. He's got fruit powers. Serpent 04 then swims very fast to Nami, then jumps and grabs her by the neck. Sanji dives into action, blazing with rage. "I don't give a crap whether you're Jinbei or not," he roars, delivering a blazing kick right to the clone's chest. Robin shouts, "Gigante Fleur," and her giant arms surge into the fray. Robin, furious, said that was unforgivable, then unleashes Sea Serpent and Snapdragon Spank. Usopp yells for her to get out of there, but it's too late. Young Jinbei counters with Fishman Karate. Robin barely evades. Usopp fires back with Lethal Green Star, exploding grass. But he still says, "This isn't Jinbei, but it still feels wrong." But the Seraphim disappears. He's gone. They're overwhelmed by how real and powerful he is. The Seraphim reappears at the back of Usopp and grabs him by the neck as well. Sanji shouts Usopp's name, but Frankie already's locked into the Seraphim as he shouts, "I've got this, Sanji." "Usopp, don't move a muscle." He then releases Radical Beam with a shout. Back at the lab's observation room, two more Vegapunks monitor the situation. One is a stubby figure in a helmet, Vegapunk Edison, who shouts, "Watch it, S-Shark. This is getting risky." The Seraphim just got hit by a laser beam, prompting alarm. Edison panics. "He just used a beam. We ain't meant to put it through a laser test yet." but then gets excited. Oh, Eureka! I've just thought up a new invention. He also said, "I'll leave the rest to you, Pythagoras. I'll have to jot down the blueprint right away." Of course, Vegapunk Pythagoras said. As Vegapunk Edison is racing to put all his idea to paper, he calls for York, the gluttonous Vegapunk, to eat for him. The ideas won't stop flowing. York, lounging with food in hand, obeys with a drawn-out sure thigh. Later, we see York's BMI clocking over 600, casually eating and heading for the toilet. She's literally just the crew's digestion system. Impressive and horrifying. Suddenly, a new, more serious voice calls out. A tall, black-coated figure appears. Dr. Vegapunk Shaka, codenamed Logic. He orders the Seraphim to halt. "That's enough, Seraphim. Return." The Straw Hats are stunned. Their feet won't move. Shaka explains Dom's shoes can be magnetically disabled within the lab. Frankie is stunned. "What the hell? We're stuck to the floor." Shaka confirms he is also Vegapunk and warns them not to resist. "I know better than to let my guard down around pirates." He turns toward the group and poses a shocking question. "What if I were to tell you that long ago there was once a highly advanced kingdom, a civilization from 900 years ago? Would you believe me?" The crew's eyes widen. 900 years ago, Shaka reveals that this ancient civilization was not unlike Egghead in terms of technology. "It's an island of the past," Shaka says as the panel zooms into Luffy's group, gazing upon the towering, rusted, ancient robot. Awe takes hold. A heavy storm of memory and legacy begins to brew. The crew is stunned. "Are you saying that machinery like this existed in the distant past?" Shaka, calm and composed, drops the shocker. This futuristic tech could have been created during the Void Century. The crew is floored. "What are you saying?" Shaka continues. "This is based on conjecture, but machinery excavated from ancient ruins appears to belong to a lost, highly advanced kingdom." Robin listens with narrowed eyes. This touches O'Hara's forbidden truth. Shaka reveals more. 22 years ago, O'Hara was destroyed by a buster call. The world government erased every trace of the ancient kingdom to shape the narrative. They erased it from history itself, he explains. And those who remembered? Also erased. The Straw Hats are floored. Frankie and Usopp cry out, stunned at the scale of the cover-up. Robin tries to keep calm, but it's clear the memory of O'Hara's destruction still burns inside her. Shaka believes the Void Century was a war, a forgotten kingdom against 20 united nations that would become the world government. Shaka then looks directly at Robin and poses the heavy question. "So tell me, Nico Robin, if I am right, then wouldn't the government's actions be tantamount to confirmation?" Robin, shaken, confronts the truth. Even discussing it could mean instant erasure. But Shaka isn't done yet. "The will of O'Hara lives on," he declares. Robin, furious, demands to know how he could possibly know about the kingdom O'Hara died, trying to uncover. Shaka answers, because he visited the island after its destruction. A memory begins. A few months after the buster call, Shaka walked across the scorched earth of O'Hara. There, he discovered something extraordinary. The Tree of Knowledge was burned, but the lake at the island's center had been filled with books. A massive cache of knowledge, preserved. Underscore the scholars didn't go quietly. They died preserving the truth. Shaka assumed the scholars used their last moments to save as much information as possible. And the ones who recovered the books? Giants. Robin gasps. Giants. Among them, a familiar voice called out to that day. "Is that you?" he asked. Shaka turned and saw Dragon. Yes, that Dragon. Revolutionary leader. Luffy's father. Shaka recalls how Dragon was furious. Those harmless scholars were brutally snuffed out. Dragon vowed to raise an army. "I'll change the world," he declared. Underscore, it was this moment, the flames of O'Hara's destruction, that gave birth to the Revolutionary Army. Within a year, Dragon, Kuma, and Ivankov would form the core of the army that still shakes the world. The will of O'Hara would not die. Back in the present, the crew absorbs the gravity of Dragon's rage. Robin asks if Dragon's fury was motivated by Professor Clover's fate. Vegapunk confirms it and reveals another bombshell. He traveled to Elbaf. The giants allowed him to read every rescued book. I memorized it all, he says, tapping his helmeted head. It's all in my head. Underscore smartest man in the world. Walking hard drive of forbidden history. Robin realizes something. That giant captain, he's called Saul, isn't he? Her eyes fill with tears. Vegapunk won't confirm it, but his silence speaks volumes. Robin breaks down. Thank you for not letting O'Hara's sacrifice be in vain. The weight of her past crashes down, but this time, she's not alone. Vegapunk assures her. I try to help progress every field of thought. It's my nature as a scholar. Then, with a solemn tone, Vegapunk adds, there's something I want to show you. Before they can react, their Dom's shoes suddenly move on their own. Wah! The crew cries as they're forcibly escorted deeper into the lab. Elsewhere, Luffy's team has a problem. The robot they found isn't responding. The crew tries shouting, guessing its name, and even giving it a push. Suddenly, boom! It powers up violently, shocking everyone. The robot's gonna blow. Chaos erupts. Vegapunk's original body, the wild-haired genius, appears mid-flight, being hurled across the lab like a rag doll. Save me, Quasar! Underscore no thoughts, just science explosions. He crashes onto the scene as multiple voices call out to him. Vegapunk, you're floating. Those shoes have a hover function, he shouts, trying to explain. Meanwhile, everyone is zipping around in chaos. Dr. Vegapunk, the man with the biggest brain in the world, has appeared. The main body of the legend has arrived. Bonnie, staring at the man's now perfectly proportioned head, can't help but shout, "What happened to your light bulb head?" Vegapunk casually explains that it had grown too large, so he cut it, just like trimming hair. Obviously, as he lifts off his hat to reveal the top of his head, we find out the truth. Vegapunk is a brainiac man who consumed the Nomi Nomi Nomi, granting him the ability to store an unlimited amount of knowledge in his brain. With every byte of data added, his brain continued to grow, hence the ridiculous size it once had. But not to worry, it's all stored elsewhere now. Pointing to the island summit, Vegapunk directs everyone's attention to a massive dome labeled Punk Records, a hangar that now contains his brain, continuously growing and syncing with him via the antenna on his head. Yes, that apple is an antenna. Try not to question it too hard. Meanwhile, Jinbei and the others get a crash course in mad scientist logistics. Vegapunk explains that there are 6 clones of him on the island, each specializing in different tasks, but all sharing his personality. Every day, their minds sync with the Punk Records, ensuring the collective genius continues evolving. If every human could connect to Punk Records, Vegapunk muses, arms stretched wide, then someday my brain will be shared with all of mankind. Cue grandiose music and probably several ethical red flags. Jinbei, ever the grounded one, raises a serious question. Wouldn't that mean everyone could read your thoughts? Vegapunk dismisses the concern with glee. Science can't advance if we worry about such things. Sure, document. Let's all upload ourselves to the hive mind while we're at it. A more emotional confrontation brews. Bonnie pulls out a beam saber, furious at Vegapunk for turning her father, Bartholomew Kuma, into an emotionless weapon. She demands he change him back or face the consequences. Vegapunk tries to de-escalate, warning her the saber is a failed prototype. Too late. As she activates it, the blade's true function is revealed. It summons a horrifying swarm of insects. Bonnie is immediately overwhelmed and collapses in a panic. That beam function was designed to attract a massive number of bugs. Vegapunk mutters, sweating bullets. Why? Just why? Even Luffy can't help but yell in delight. Look, a giant stag beetle. Priorities, Captain. Priorities. Vegapunk started telling story about the metal giant, that it is the one that attacked Mary Geos 200 years ago, and that it might be older than 900 years. He continued that the researchers did not know the reason why it was created and where it came from and what it was trying to do. He also said that the world government ordered its destruction, but the researchers didn't do it because of their curiosity and hid it. Robin's group is watching Luffy's group from the monitor as Vegapunk continues his story. He said that 200 years ago is the same year that discrimination against fishmen started. Vegapunk Shaka added that with all their science, he still cannot recreate the metal giant, so he can't believe the machine soldier was made from 900 years ago. He said the problem is power. The group is happy, though, that Luffy and the others are okay, and they started talking about Jewelry Bonnie. Back to Luffy's group. Vegapunk solemnly looks at Bonnie and wishes he had given something to her earlier. Turning to Luffy, he makes an unexpected request. "Can you take me out of Egghead?" Cut to the sea. Cypher Pole's ship arrives, transmitting a call. Rob Lucci, Kaku, Stussy, and the rest of CP0 are on board. Lucci, cold as ever, confirms, "Next time I see Bonnie, I'll definitely kill her." No hesitation. Typical government hospitality. Inside the lab, Shaka receives the call and quickly reacts. Knowing Lucci's presence would incite chaos, he orders the harboring request to be denied and tells everyone to prepare for interception. The crew reacts in alarm, Robin especially, her face hardening at the name Rob Lucci. Meanwhile, far away at the Kamabaka Kingdom, Dragon and the Revolutionary Army spot something alarming. Kuma, who is still under repair, suddenly begins to move uncontrollably. He bolts without warning, eyes wide and body trembling. Everyone rushes to stop him, but it's too late. "Kuma, please come back." "Where are you going?" shouts Dragon. Ivankov screams, flames in his eyes. From now on, our battle as the Revolutionary Army will begin. As Kuma charges forward with no clear destination in sight, one truth becomes clear. Something is beginning. CP0's ship floats in the snowy seas near Egghead, its masked agents cold and calculating. A voice from Egghead answers inquiry from CP0 about recent government disappearances. For 2 months, ships from CP5, CP7, and CP8 vanished after visiting the island. But the response from Egghead is deflective. All departures had been confirmed. Tensions rise quickly. Lilith erupts, offended by the implication that they had anything to do with the disappearances. "Don't mess with us," she shouts. Lucci, unfazed, quietly instructs to prepare to abandon ship. The agents will invade by air using S-Bear's powers. Vegapunk's monstrous sea beasts are sure to obliterate their vessel the moment they approach. Far away, at the Revolutionary Army's base on the Grand Line, the scene shifts to Kuma. Though still under repair, he suddenly jolts to life. With barely a word, he begins to move, panic erupting among those around him. Dragon watches as Kuma's body begins to vanish. With a pop, the great cyborg disappears into the distance. Nothing like a surprise teleportation in the middle of surgery. Back at Egghead Scrapyard, Vegapunk walks with Luffy and the others, admitting that despite his freedom with government funds, he's run into a different problem. There are too many ideas and not enough people to bring them to life. His dream is clear: to build a world where energy is free and abundant for all. But as Luffy presses him, the dream goes deeper. Vegapunk wants to eliminate the root of all war, the struggle for energy. He believes that science, if it could turn the invisible energy that surrounds the world into usable power, could one day erase war altogether. The scientist's eyes shine as he speaks of a dream where visible power is accessible to everyone, ending the need for conflict. Too bad humans are humans. Luffy, predictably, is only half listening. But Vegapunk doesn't mind. What he seeks isn't fame, or even a title of hero. It's knowledge, the forbidden truths hidden in the world. As he's come closer to decoding an ancient power source, the same one that fueled the great metal soldier, he knows he's crossed a line, one that might lead to his destruction at the hands of the world government. Suddenly, an explosion rocks the land. Lucci and the CP0 agents have landed, cutting through with S-Bear's abilities. Vegapunk grimly predicts his own fate, comparing his knowledge to that of O'Hara, a past tragedy wiped clean by the government. He tells the crew to evacuate the lab and bring Bonnie to safety. The battlefield will soon arrive. As the CP0 team makes landfall, they immediately encounter the futuristic defenses of Egghead, sea beasts, holograms, and an invisible boundary called the Frontier Dome, which blasts intruders with laser beams if crossed. Kaku, naturally, flew right into it and gets lit up. Gotta hand it to him. That man's commitment to being a walking test dummy is unparalleled. Stussy explains that many of the monsters are holograms, designed for confusion. But the moment quickly escalates when Atlas, one of Vegapunk's satellites, charges forward, enraged and unwilling to let chaos unfold on her turf. "No one is allowed to wreak havoc more than me," she roars. She unleashes a mighty blow, but Lucci responds with cold efficiency. This is not a game. Rokugan, his devastating attack slams into her head, a brutal reminder that CP0 doesn't play fair. Screams echo across the island. Vegapunk's team watches in horror as Atlas crumples. Panic breaks out. Researchers scramble for safety. The order goes out. Evacuate the factory. Get Bonnie to safety. Prepare for war. Luffy spots Lucci in the distance. Their eyes lock. Straw Hat versus Pigeon Guy. A fateful encounter reignited.